Hello, everyone, and welcome to It Takes a Viking, the official podcast of the Salem State University Alumni Association. My name is Mike Mitchell, and I serve as Assistant Director of Alumni Relations here at Salem State. Today features the next part in our Veterans Appreciation Week conversations, and we welcome Colonel Cheryl Lussier Poppe. A 2001 graduate of Salem State's Bertillon School of Business, Colonel Lussier Poppe retired from active service with the Massachusetts National Guard in 2008 after 3 decades and holding positions within the Joint Force Headquarters, the 51st Troop Command and 79th Troop Command, and as Battalion Commander for the 726th Finance Battalion. Prior to her current role, Colonel Lussier Poppe served as Superintendent of the Chelsea Soldiers Home for more than 6 years, a role in which she was appointed in April 2014. And in October of 2020, she was named Secretary for the Department of Veterans Services for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Colonel, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me, Mike.
We're looking forward to getting to know your story a little bit and the work that you're doing. So the first question we always like to ask to all of our guests is, how did you end up studying, coming to Salem State? What brought you here?
Well, I live in Salem, and when I was looking at graduate school, I was looking at, different kinds of schools in the area. I wanted to go into business because in the military, you're always in leadership roles. And I felt that an MBA would be probably the best combination of those to complement my military background. And Salem State was close. It was a good value from my perspective. And I had been familiar with some undergrads who had gone there during my time living in Salem.
Very good. And obviously a member of the Guard while you were studying here at the university. Can you talk a little bit about some of your service history with the Guard?
Sure. So I was, as you mentioned, I had served in the National Guard in, the traditional supposedly one weekend a month for several years in different kinds of capacities. Personnel administration was my background, so company command and other different positions. And then when I think it was right around when I applied to Salem State, actually, for my MBA, I also went on active duty with the National Guard and went on to those different command tours and different assignments. So I was going to school, not full time. I probably did one course a semester. Took me a little longer than some. It took me 5 years to graduate. I think I doubled up the last year, but so that way I was able to actually go to school while I was still serving.
Okay. And now you've been in your current role for roughly about a year or so now, coming from the Chelsea Soldiers Home.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about, after your service life, kind of the path you took that led you to where you are today?
Right. So I was a personnel officer, and this was obviously during the deployments from 2000, when we were deploying our soldiers and airmen overseas from the National Guard. And I started to get involved working reintegration issues as I started to see veterans coming back, our soldiers and airmen coming back, and sometimes having some challenges with that return. So I was working with what we call the Yellow Ribbon Reintegration Program, which was helping our veterans when they came back from service at the 30-day, 60-day, 90-day, and then onward intervals, making sure that we gave them the support to be able to go back to their jobs or back to their school and reunite with their families. So after that, I saw the opportunity actually to continue to work with veterans. And that's when I went to work for the Department of Veterans Services at that time as the Director of Programs and Services, which was outreach. And then I became their Chief of Staff and, worked in many other areas and disciplines, but pretty much overseeing all the outreach programs, which was suicide prevention, women veterans, housing and homelessness, employment grants, and that, which really kind of that way I was able to help veterans of all different services after having served in the Army National Guard.
Okay. And now in your role as Secretary for the Department of Veteran Services for the Commonwealth, can you talk a little bit about what a day in the office might look like for you?
Well, obviously today I'm home, but there are, with the whole hybrid work model and obviously during the pandemic, we've approached for a long time, people were working outside of the office space for safety reasons. But then we started gradually getting back out into the community. So a day it may center around meetings. It may center around workshops. We have a lot of work that we're doing right now in different areas that I can talk about. So sometimes it involves being in Boston. Other days it involves visiting one of our locations, whether it's the soldiers' homes, whether it's our cemeteries, whether it's some of our contact officers or one of the veteran service officers. In Massachusetts, we have a veteran service officer in every city and town. And I know Kim Emmerling because he works very closely with your students at Salem State. And also, we've been fortunate. When I was at the Soldiers Home, I had Salem State students as interns, and I also had some Salem State students that were doing VA work study. So I was still able to have that, keep engaging with the students and with the university after.
And now that you've been in kind of this, in the field of the soldiers' homes and veteran care and things like that, with the benefit of hindsight now, do you think you could see yourself doing anything else? And if so, what do you think that would be?
It's hard to say that. It really, my background was actually, my undergrad, which was in Rhode Island, was in elementary education. So I kind of took a real deviation when I went into the leadership and the business. But at this point, it's been very rewarding, and I really couldn't see myself as doing anything else.
Okay, that's fair. That's perfectly fair. And now to the point that you've achieved, your current position, as you look back and consider, is there any one thing that may stand out to you as one of your biggest accomplishments or one of your biggest challenges that maybe you had to overcome in your career? And what do you think those would be?
Within the military career, obviously being a woman in the military was still a unique challenge at the beginning. Now we see many more women in the military because we're the fastest growing population of veterans. And now women are now 20% of the active duty force and growing in the veteran community as well. Then career-wise, I guess one of the things that I looked at in terms of, I guess the challenge would be, is I always felt I waited too long to get my master's degree. And because I felt like, oh gosh, I'm 45 graduating with my master's degree. Now 45 seems pretty young, but I look back and I think coming to Salem State with my military background, meeting other people who worked sometimes in public service, but some other people worked in different business. It was a really wonderful way to get to know people and the professors and the faculty. That it was really, I was glad that at the end of it, I think there was a silver lining, because I think you're showing that we're always lifelong learners.
Excellent. And so as you think back to your time at Salem, do you have, this is always just a fun one we'd like to ask, do you have any one memory or experience that stands out to you from your time here that you remember well?
I just enjoyed, again, when you're going to school part-time and you're going as a graduate student, it's not like you're able to be there for all the sporting events or all the athletic events, but I really did enjoy being able to, one of my favorite classes was entrepreneurship, where we worked with some of the people who were at the incubator, the business incubator at the Enterprise Center. And we were actually able to help construct a business plan for someone who was starting their business and helping to have that grow. And I think beyond that one, and I can't remember the names of the professors now, which I researched. One of my other favorite classes was business ethics, because it combined ethics and it also combined philosophy. And so you got really two great instructors for really the price of one in that same discipline. And I think we learned a lot about ethics and how to do things the right way.
And so your time at Salem as a student comes to an end in 2001. And, obviously we're here some years later now, but I know as a graduate yourself, you've stayed connected to the school in a number of ways. Can you talk a little bit about ways you've been involved as a graduate here?
Sure. So obviously, still very involved with the veterans community, and I know again with the pandemic, some of those connections have not always don't look like what they did maybe 20 months ago. I have always been invited and grateful to have been invited to the welcome to the when the freshmen come in as veterans to talk about the different programs that are available to them at the school, but also I would always say I offered them engagement opportunities because being at the Soldiers Home and working in veteran services, we give veteran students the opportunity to continue to serve, whether it's in an internship or, like I said, VA work study, other opportunities to engage. And Salem State in particular, we worked together. I forget what year it was now. Several of us got together with the Student Veterans Engagement Committee and a number of alumni and put together an alumni dinner as they were forming a veterans affinity group. And the students ran with it. So they developed so many more programs that I could see there on campus. And one of the most touching ones is the stole ceremony that they do at Salem State right before graduation, so that when those students graduate, they have a stole, with the red, white, and blue flash. So you can see that they've served in the military. And I understand when they go to graduation, they've been getting standing ovations for their service. So that was a really wonderful program to be part of. And when I can get a chance, I try to take in a theater performance because they have a wonderful theater program at Salem State. And when they have alumni weekend and they have, I forget what we call it now, it's on the quad there.
Yeah, party on McEwen Plaza.
Yeah, party on the
Yeah.
plaza, right? With all the food trucks. It's a lot of fun. And it's fun to see undergrads and graduate students and veterans and to connect again with some of the faculty that are, some of them are still there and some of them just return, even though, they may have retired from the system. They still come back for the events.
And so before we let you go, you've obviously stayed very connected since you graduated. And as a Salem resident, I'm sure even before that too, but what does it mean to you to be a member of our alumni community in the Salem State family?
Well, obviously living in Salem, the university is a big part of the community. And so that's important to be a Viking in many different ways. Salem as a community is a first in many ways. There's a whole list of the firsts in Salem. And so being part of that community is really special. And I think it's a great place for people to go to school. You're near a city, you're near the water. You're also, behind you, you're not far from Marblehead and trails, the conservation area. There's just a really good opportunity for students in so many ways to be engaged. We're also, if you probably know, Salem is the birthplace of the National Guard. So I have a particular pride in living in a city and going to a school that has that history. And Vikings in and of themselves were, they're among the first. I think there's some research that's just come out recently. I have to go back and look for that article, that I think they believe that Vikings were here. They do believe they were on the continent before Christopher Columbus. But I'll have to qualify that before someone, criticizes me over that piece. But I think that's really the important pride, to be a Viking in many ways. And so
Excellent.
I hope we do see more student engagement and more students coming to Salem, because I think it's a great opportunity for great education.
I couldn't agree with you more. Well, Colonel, thank you so much. I'm sure, time is precious for you these days with the role that you currently hold. So we really appreciate you carving out a little bit of your day to spend some time with us. We're thrilled to have you as a member of the family. Thank you so much. And that was our wonderful interview with Colonel Cheryl Lussier Poppe, Secretary for the Department of Veterans Services here for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I'd like to thank you all for watching, and we hope you stay tuned this week for more great content as part of Veterans Appreciation Week. Until next time, I'm Mike Mitchell, Assistant Director of Alumni Relations here at Salem State. Thanks for watching.